but Motus was putting out line after line after line.
Well, it's interesting because it felt like from the outside looking in, it felt like Motus was doing all of the right things.
Hey, welcome back to STS. On this show, we like to pick apart current events and reflect on past experiences. The both of us have been training parkour and coaching it for over a decade. And so we like to think that having conversations like this will help provide insight into the world of parkour that you might not hear anywhere else.
In today's episode, we talked about Motus projects closing down, what's gonna happen to those guys, the overwhelming amount of parkour videos that just dropped, and some of our favorite picks, and also how there seems to be this culture shift in parkour right now where you can send stuff, get a little messy, but still be able to defend it.
Please like, subscribe, and share this with a friend. And now, on to STS.
Have you ever had to shovel snow?
Have I ever had to shovel snow? Yeah, I think I've shoveled a little bit of snow in my time.
In your time?
In my time.
Yeah, because like currently this is more snow than you've seen in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's pretty wild actually. I was thinking about like getting a bit of snow and putting it in a glass and seeing if it actually melts while we're on camera here. Because it's cold in the office too.
Yeah. Get warmed up here. Yeah, the last time we actually had, I was reflecting on this with Gloria. The last time that it snowed this much was when I first started seeing her. And the reason I know is because I built her an igloo.
Oh yeah, okay.
And she's continued to ask me like year after year when she's gonna get another igloo.
Yeah.
But it hasn't snowed enough. But it might happen. It might happen this year. Although it's not the very like sticky kind. It's kind of powdery.
It's really, really powdery. Yeah, it doesn't stick together at all. It needs to get wetter. But it doesn't make good snowballs, you know? I tried to throw one at Caroline earlier and it's just like dust.
You ever face wash someone?
That's just, you ever bully someone? That's what you just told me. No, I haven't.
I received several and also have given a fair amount. Yeah. We used to get pretty good snowfalls when I was a kid, because building snow forts was like a big part of my childhood.
Yeah.
Because you were telling me the other day, like since you've been in Vancouver, this is the most and the coldest it's been like this time of the year.
Yeah, especially this early. Like it doesn't usually start snowing until very late December or usually January actually, and then maybe like a late snow in February. But we are in a very early snow year. We are already snowed like in November, right? Which is so unusual. So even though we live in Canada, it's still weird because.
We're lower Canada.
We're lower, not only lower Canada, but West Coast Canada, which is really just rainy winters.
It's true. But anyways, with the snow, the gym is still open.
Yep.
Port Moody is closed. You know what's also closed?
What's closed?
The Motus projects.
Oh, no. Okay. That's some pretty massive news in the parkour world. It actually sent ripples through it.
I actually, so yesterday I told you I was wearing my Soul Destroyer shirt because we were going to do this yesterday. Why didn't we do this yesterday?
We ran out of time.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Because we were trying to catch up on all the videos that we wanted to talk about today.
But before we get into that, we do have a list. I don't even know. But yeah, Motus, not a thing anymore. Lots to unpack there. I guess the first thing is just Giles in general. The saga of Giles, which he's been documenting. You can go on what used to be Vis-a-Vis Productions.
Visive.
It's not really?
Yeah.
It's not okay.
It was Visive, like that was Giles' like original like production, like video company. And now it's basically, now he kind of converted that channel to Giles Motus, which was basically him in podcast form talking about kind of trying to build the brand in public, which was really interesting to see because he's talking about like all these different things that he's learned throughout his experience running Motus. But he kind of started off that series with like Motus is in trouble.
Yeah.
Like he was kind of sounding the alarm, like, oh no, like this is everything is going wrong, and like Motus isn't selling as much as it used to, and it's not as cool of a brand anymore. It was really cool when Soul Destroyer came out, and then it's just kind of fizzled away over the years. And do you think that's true? Do you think like when you think about Motus, do you think of it as being like a cool brand?
Yeah. When he started putting out those videos, I actually had a couple of DMs with Giles. And one of the things I told him was actually it is the most worn brand at the gym.
Yeah.
Out of all, I see more Motus than I see Storer, than I see Farang, than I see Tempest. I see mostly people wearing Motus Projects apparel. So from the outside looking in, one would think, oh, they're probably doing, I think we'd actually mentioned that between us before too, that we kind of assumed that they were the clothing brand that was killing it the most, maybe outside of Storer, because Storer just with their following alone, one could assume that they're probably selling out easier. But Motus was putting out line after line after line.
Well, it's interesting because it felt like from the outside looking in, it felt like Motus was doing all of the right things.
Yeah.
Right. The one thing they weren't doing, which was putting out regular content the same way Storer was, because content is kind of what is the main marketing driver towards like making your brand look cool. But even then, when they did put out content, it was always cool and interesting to watch. They started the whole like workshop thing where they actually rented out and kind of took control over the production of like printing a lot of the shirts that they were making, which was an interesting move. And they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna like make videos in the workshop too. And like that was like, okay, yeah, this is like turning into like a brand that I want to follow and be interested in, and as kind of like a spectator on the outside. Mm-hmm. But I guess the sales weren't really backing it up, and maybe that's, we could speculate as to
those are some big expenses.
Yeah, rent.
Yeah,
that's huge.
I can't think of another, other than, so like Tempest has spaces and things, offices and whatnot, but they also have gyms and they also have stunt money, so like that brand can sustain renting spaces. But as far as I know, even Storer doesn't have like an HQ.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I can't think of actually any brand other than a gym brand that has an HQ, because a gym brand is just like, well, it's like this, we have an office, but the office is just an extension of the gym.
Yeah.
So it's all looped in together, and the gym pays the bills for renting an office. So that was like I remember when that happened too, and I was like, whoa, it's a big move. And again, it fuels this idea that, oh, they must be killing it if they're making that move. But
yeah, and they had the most legit podcast set up. Like they had like a whole podcast studio where it felt like it just felt like they were doing all the right things, and creating a a brand culture. Mm-hmm. And turns out it wasn't going so well. And we don't really know all of the insider details of that, because Giles he's been transparent about it, but he's not telling you like detailed, like, oh, like this month we were in the negative or whatever. But I'm sure it was a really big challenge. Plus, I guess another big part of it too was he kind of started with this base team of athletes, and then over time they kind of just started going off and doing their own thing, or just kind of peeling away from the brand, and it kind of just now ultimately just kind of became Keelan, and now Bloggy, who was not even a part of the original core team. And so and I think largely that's due to like he's not able to pay the athletes to like be a part of the brand and like be promoting Motus, even though that was initially what made Motus cool, right? It wasn't like, if it wasn't for having that initial team of athletes and doing the tour, the US tour, Spitting in the Wind, and and the Origins project. What was that called? Motus Origins or?
I don't know. I
Anyway,
was
they
too
went
triggered to.
They went to Nice in France, where like the birthplace of parkour, to like bring like the new.
I remember, I remember.
They
that,
brought
yeah.
the new school athletes to the old world environment where parkour was founded, and kind of made a video around it. And those were like really cool and interesting because you get to see, like, again, from the outside perspective, it was like, oh, like this is a cool brand because we've got like, this is all about like the up and coming athletes and then each of those athletes ended up becoming a bigger name in parkour as a result of Motus. But also Motus was bolstered up because of those individual athletes. So it was like kind of this synergistic effect. But again, over the course of time, they all just kind of peeled away and did their own thing. And largely, I think, because Motus was no longer giving them extra, like they weren't getting additional following as a result of being part of Motus. They already had a huge following now, and it's like, okay, now I'm just gonna go do my own thing.
Yeah. So that's a lot of, that's part of what Motus was, and kind of what was happening, which in itself is a lot to cover. Like if we wanted to just talk about and reminisce about what the brand meant, but I'm really interested on what's happening now, which is kind of almost like an acquisition, but that wasn't the plan. So Storer was looking for a Giles. They were looking for someone to essentially take over the clothing side of the business, and they actually had a social media post about it. And Giles put in his channel, he put that he had actually called Drew that day to pose the idea, like, what if it was, was me? And that sounded ideal. And so I believe Keelan is doing some of the store edits. And so he's going to be joining on as well. And I guess Bloggy is also coming along for the ride. So it all kind of is seeming to work out. But it's kind of interesting because for me it feels like an acquisition. It feels like Storer is buying Motus because that's actually what's happening. Like that's when you really break it down. Let me try this here because you have a brand where it's like, okay, you have two brands, right? One brand is three people.
Yeah.
Right. And they're working together and they have their thing. And then the other brand is acquiring those three people and they're shutting down Motus. So that's an acquisition. But it's not like the plan was not an acquisition.
It's not. But here, let me frame it differently though, okay? So here's the thing. It's not an acquisition. Literally, Giles and the other two, Bloggy and Keelan, are basically just being hired by Storer and they're shutting down shop at Motus. If it was an acquisition, let's kind of reframe it in terms of the business, into terms of the gym business, right? Okay, Tempest Free Running is like, hey, we need somebody to run one of our facilities. And then you're like, yeah, Origins maybe isn't doing super well right now. Maybe I should go. Oh, you know what? I might be the perfect person for this because I am like, I know what I'm doing here at Origins, whatever. So then you decide to shut down Origins and then move to LA and work at one of the Tempest gyms.
Yeah, I guess it's only an acquisition if they kept the office and the rent. Yeah,
exactly. If they keep the office and the rent, and maybe even the brand of Motus as like maybe like a sub brand of Storer, that would be an acquisition.
Yeah. So it's only an acquisition of staff then, really.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's funny. I know you're not on Twitter, but I've
been meaning to be on Twitter.
It's not worth it. Don't do it.
No. I always want, throughout the day I keep having, this is a quick aside, I always have just words that I want to put out there in terms of parkour on a day-to-day. I was like, I should just start putting like little farts on Twitter of like little ideas I have and just see what happens.
Yeah. So Giles posted like apparently the best way to have like a great like great sales is to close down your business because I mean, they've sold out of like a bunch of their like existing stock, and then they created new stock that's
you see that
basically
hoodie they have. Yeah, that hoodie looks dope. The
2019 to 2022 or whatever, like kind of marking the start and end date of Motus, which is it's cool. And I mean, I was talking to a kid like yesterday, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I bought a Motus sweater or whatever because it was cool." But it's like, yeah, like I replied to Giles' tweet and I said, "Would have been a good April Fool's move." You get all the sales and be like, "Hey, JK, we're good." But yeah. So I do have a confession to make about Motus. I love Motus. I loved what they did. I thought they were like such a cool brand. I absolutely hated their original logo.
Oh, me too. Yeah, I wasn't about it. Sorry. Although, for the sake of taste for people, I have heard that people really liked it.
Right.
I got what it was, like the sort of parkour side of it. It just looked like a weird tic-tac-toe thing. And it wasn't.
It's like the circle with a line through it, and then two other lines above and below, right? And do you know what that was supposed to represent? I'm assuming, I have an assumption.
I thought it was over, under, through.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Which is a cool concept, but it just looked really...
You know who did that first?
Yes. K-Swiss?
Yes.
Woo!
That's actually a dope graphic that they did, because it had a bit of a turn in it, but they did... It looked like a knot, but I thought that was a nicely done idea of the over, under, through that K-Swiss did with the Ariake back in the day.
It ain't no glyph, let me tell you. I was happy to see that Motus kind of got away from that in the later years, and they just kind of like...
Yeah, some people hated that though. Some people hated
it. That's not a really cool logo either, but it's better than the circle with lines.
Well, I don't know. Is this a cool logo? I don't know. I've drawn this one over so many times.
They can't see it. Show it off. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what's cool anymore.
Well, how old is that logo? And not including the revisions.
Not this revision of it, but it's 15 years.
15 years old. All right. Maybe time for an update. The Origins projects.
On the topic of logos, Gloria mentioned this to me before, that like she likes that I have a logo that is, representative of what you're doing or what the business is. Like you walk up to a storefront and you see a guy going, and it's like, okay, this is some sort of action thing or whatever. Because she dislikes that the world has moved towards just fonts and words.
Yeah.
So a lot of logos aren't even logos. It's just a font and the name of the business. Whereas in the olden day, like you wanted to go get some shoes, you walk down the street and you see like a boot.
Yeah.
And that's where you get your shoes from. You want to go lift weights, you might see a dumbbell somewhere or something. So I think that's cool. I think having like symbols and images, I prefer that over words and text. But there's also, I'm sure there's, I'm not going to try to think of them now, but I'm sure there's a lot of brands where just the font and the word alone is very recognizable of the brand.
Mm-hmm. So now with Motus closing, they are going to store. What do you think of that move in general?
It's interesting because on one hand you have Giles, who has worked with them before. They kind of know what they're getting into. But if he just failed more or less a company, and I'm so sorry, Giles, about this, but I'm just thinking if it were me and I'm hiring someone and like they're the one who's failing right now, I think he has enough qualities and has learned enough that those mistakes won't be made again. Plus, he's only in charge of the clothing department, not the brand overall. So it's probably a great move. Initially, when I heard it, I thought this means store is going to have some cool clothing finally.
So outside of the whole Giles failed Motus, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think he could have continued running Motus and maybe in 5 years' time, like kind of pulled it into the right direction, but we don't know that. But I think now that he has a lot of the mistakes, he's basically able to bury the mistakes of Motus and kind of start anew with Storer. And now he's got a fresh template to work with. And he's now learned so much about e-commerce, about creating, emails to like convert customers. He's learned so much about marketing and also the clothing production side of things that it makes a lot of sense for him to move. And I think it's going to end up turning Store into more of a juggernaut than they already
another
are.
way of framing it is, I've had some DMs with Giles in the last year, and I said, I failed a lot too, and I lost a ton of money, and went really far into debt with Origins, doing a lot of the same mistakes, such as legacy moves that Giles did, and I came out of it. But I'm on year 10.
Yeah.
Motus is on, what was it, year 5-ish? We'll just say 5. We'll say 5, maybe more.
Well, 4, I think.
So
change maybe.
So he could, and he had the right attitude about it, and it's very likely that they could have crawled out of it. So even though I'm saying it's a failure, I'm also accepting like I've been a failure, and I think that's okay to be that, because you can still turn things around to a success. And the difference is, if 5 years ago, which was actually when I was at Origins, was at a very much a low, if someone had come in with an injection of capital, that would have fixed everything. And essentially that's like what Motus needed. They needed, if they had an injection of capital, that could have fixed everything.
Sorry, you said year 4?
I would say like year 5, year 6.
Year 5, year 6.
Was
See,
the low.
I actually kind of disagree
With
what you just said there, of like that would have fixed everything. Because here's my rationale. Here's my rationale. It's like, because now from year 6 to year 10, you've learned so much more about how to like make the business more efficient that you maybe wouldn't have learned if you just had somebody come in and fix the mistakes.
When I say injection of capital, I also mean like, I don't know. I guess when I say that, I mean like some sort of partner would have to come in.
Someone who knew how to operate.
Someone who's a bit more of an operator, not someone that knows a lot about stuff about Parkour, but knows a lot of stuff about business, things that I had to correct. But yeah, we did it. We got through. Things are good now.
See, it's like now, if somebody came in with a big injection of capital, I think it would be able to scale and kind of create a bigger opportunity. But I think it's good that didn't happen, because ultimately, like, we've shifted the trajectory of where Origins.
Yeah, so I guess for Giles, as for growth, I wonder if this move is good or bad for his growth as an entrepreneur.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. We hope you're getting some value out of the conversation and hearing things that you might not hear anywhere else.
We also demonetize these videos, so you won't get any ad interruptions, but it would help us out a ton if you actually shared it. So whether you're listening to this on YouTube or it's a podcast, please drop us a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please share it. Without further ado, let's get back into today's episode.
So I haven't listened to they just released like their last Motus project or podcast.
Oh, really?
So,
man, I feel like we've been trying to record this week, and it's just like every day there's new stuff happening.
It's impossible to stay on top. But so I haven't listened to it yet. But he was alluding to in his Giles Motus, like, hey, I'm shutting down my brand to join store video. He was alluding to the fact that Motus might not be completely done, and he might be able to come back with Motus in some fashion, maybe not clothing, but like be a cultural brand in some capacity later on. He hinted at it. He's not saying for sure, but he's like, yeah, I have some ideas of how to do something that wouldn't necessarily be a conflict of interest with Storer. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I think this is ultimately a good thing for him. It maybe will provide an additional avenue for him to grow, because now he's no longer concerned about like, is Motus gonna stay alive this month? And he gets to just kind of play around and kind of maybe do other or take other risks that maybe because he has access to like a bigger brand to work with. I don't know. We'll see. Only time will tell. I think it's cool that Bloggy and Keelan are coming with him, because Storer for sure needs editors. They definitely need somebody to like make the clothing, and Bloggy seems to be doing good things in terms of design. What I'm really curious about is a lot of the projects that Motus had in store for over the course of the next year plus, what's going to come of those? Because we know Bloggy was working on some clothing that hasn't seen the light of day yet. Is that just going to become Storer? Are they just throwing that out the window? We don't really know that yet. And I think Keelan was working on edits and stuff. So I think that some of it might just be dead.
Yeah, I think overall it is good for growth for all three of them, because they were, even though like I'm saying you have, and you're talking about just myself in general, how you get to a point where you're failing, and in order to crawl out of that, you have to grow. And they were starting to crawl out of that, and I think they probably experienced enough of that period of having to be creative, having to work extra, having all the things that come with like, okay, we got to get out of this situation. They were in that state, and yeah, they were probably in that state for long enough that they had some growth and were starting to plan a way out, and now they get a reset, essentially, with Storer. And Storer gets a reset. And like I said, I wouldn't. It's funny because like I tried to purchase a shirt from Storer one time. I think it was last year. I was trying to purchase some clothing for Storer, and I was only really interested in just the basic like Storer, because I do like Storer as a brand. I would like to be able to rep it, and so like I wanted to get just their basic T-shirt. Sold out. So I have yet to actually purchase anything online from Storer, because some of their stuff is a little out there for me. I'm not really much into the vests or like the patchwork sweats,
or like the football jerseys. Soccer jerseys.
Yeah, those aren't too bad. I don't know. Nothing's really.
Yeah, but I couldn't see you wearing that. I mean, maybe I don't know. Maybe one day you'll show up wearing one. Yeah. But I've always felt that Storer isn't doing enough of street culture brand.
Yeah, you have said this a number of times.
And like all the cavemen stuff. I don't know if you follow their.
Yeah, you showed me. Yeah.
So the Cave Brothers have like an alternative account on Instagram called Cavemen, but it's like spelled weird. But well, it's just because it's spelled with like numbers and stuff. But Cavemen, they have like some really interesting like art pieces that I think would make awesome clothing. If Storer decided to kind of delve a little bit deeper into like the street culture side of parkour and not just like Storer sport, which that's an interesting like side of things, but it's not like, I don't think most parkour people aren't like into soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. Most parkour people aren't into soccer, so like they're not going to want to buy like a soccer jersey that says Storer on it. So I like personally, I would rather see like a cool like graffiti-esque art piece like on a shirt,
which is a little more Motus.
Which is way more Motus, yeah. So that's what I'm thinking. Could be a good, interesting. What's the word I'm looking for? Symbiosis between the Motus team kind of joining in as Storer members, or the Storer clothing members, or whatever you want to call them. because they're not store members, you know?
Yeah.
Because it's the 7, right? You can't add more. Or maybe you can. I don't know. What's the future for store?
I've been thinking about that too, where it's like a lot of the OG members of store itself, some of them may only have a handful of years left to be like peak performance.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 1 year for some of them, maybe 2, you know what I mean? And I wonder at what point, if they think about having to pass, if there's going to be like a new team store eventually, where it's just like an entirely new roster, or
like
if they're like us and they just keep trying to make videos.
Well, so here's the question I have is like, does store need to be top level athletes? Have they established themselves enough as a team of personalities to continue to make content even outside of like doing really cool parkour?
I could see them partnering, like they have done videos with Fat, for example. And I could see that becoming a thing where, you get a Callum and a Benj and a Drew and a Toby who are like in their late 30s, and who knows what's going to happen to them. I wish them the best. I wish nothing ill happens to any of them in terms of health or well-being. But, let's say they get to the point where they can't perform anymore. They might just be like hosting and filming and bringing it and reacting to younger athletes.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's one possible avenue. But they've already started to do content that's like not really super like parkour heavy. It's like parkour versus climbing, like who can hold on longer? And it's like, that doesn't require you having to do super hard and scary jumps. I didn't watch that video, so I don't know. Maybe in the video they also do hard and scary jumps, but same thing with like parkour versus BMX. They're just kind of trying to go up this thing.
Yeah.
So like, or like stuck in quicksand. Like they've done a bunch of content that isn't explicitly high level parkour, and I think we're gonna see more of that in their future. And hopefully we still continue to see high level parkour.
Yeah, it almost bums me out. Well, actually, no, it does. I like the street rap videos. I love
them. Yeah, I really love them.
I like the traveling places and doing parkour. I don't click on any of the who can hold on the longest and stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm missing out. And apologies to the store guys if I'm not really giving you guys a good shot on it, because maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing out, but I do appreciate store for their parkour.
Yeah, and that comes to the question, like, what is their audience? Is their audience you, or is their audience
definitely not
somebody else? Like probably a younger audience who's more likely to click on the YouTube algorithm.
So what happens to, I do want to say, what happens to the rest? Because we talked about kind of the core 3 of Motus. So a couple of other things have happened. Hazel is now on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was we're closing down Motus, and so no orders are going to be happening anymore, so we can't sell this. Do we just put it up on YouTube? I don't know what
so I think also like they have like they have a portal basically where you can access your paid content. So Hazel, but also Soul Destroyer and Soul are all paid content, like digital products that they sold through Motus. And so I imagine the Motus project's website is going to essentially be shut down. So they need to have, because people paid for the content, they need to have access to it. So they're probably just putting it up for free on YouTube. And at this point, I think sales for all of those things have probably slowed down. Maybe Hazel is the one exception. Well, it was probably slowed down, but maybe they're still making sales on Hazel, but really slowly. So they're just throwing everything up on YouTube for free. And so I don't have a problem with it personally. I don't know if anybody else does, where they're like, oh, well, I paid for this, and why is it up for free? But I don't really care. I think it's good that the athletes got paid and they were able to make some, turn their art piece into a revenue generating product. Do you have a problem with it?
No, as someone that paid for it, I'm okay with it. It feels a little weird but I also get it. I guess it just feels weird because there was no real notice for it other than that Motus is closing, and so it makes sense on that front. And I think it's good that basically Ethan and you're gonna have to what's his name that filmed it, Noah. It's very cool that they're just gonna get more eyeballs on the work they put in.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a kid yesterday who was like, "Oh, I finally watched Hazel because it was put up for free," and I was trying to convince him to pay for it like when it first came out, but he was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Is it worth it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I found it was worth it," and I guess he never did, but I tried Ethan and Noah. Tried to get the kids to pay. But I think also a part of that move is they wanted to, this is a total assumption, but they wanted to get it onto YouTube for free in time for store awards.
Okay.
Which they might, store might already be considering Hazel, but if it's behind a paywall, maybe there's like
maybe there's a stipulation.
Maybe there's a stipulation, or maybe they wouldn't consider it, or who knows, But Store Awards is coming up. I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit more.
Yeah, we can jump around here. We got a bunch of things to talk about.
So the Store Awards is coming out, and a ton of videos have been released towards the end of the year.
I am overwhelmed.
I am very overwhelmed as well. Now, here's the question: is this a typical end of year video dump that we're seeing from everybody, or is this an unusual year in terms of edits that are coming out? And do you think, this multi-part question, do you think this is a result of Store and the Store Awards?
I think it is 100% a result of Store and the Store Awards. And I have some I have some questions, particularly relating to the prize money, because I do you know this quick thing? But I think it's 100% a result of the Store Awards that we have people that are saving clips more, putting out year edits, and including in those year edits things that they haven't posted before, and all just kind of down to the wire, especially to get them out. So yes, 100% due to the Store Awards. I don't think we would be seeing the same number of videos at all. This is very unusual.
I think it's 80%. 80% the Store Awards. I think, it's largely driven by that. I also think there's a cultural shift that's happening in parkour, and maybe it is very much due to Store, but of like this whole like, hey, we have this problem with Instagram, and like it's almost like an addiction. Can we go back to making art again instead of just getting clip dumps. And I think last year and the previous few years we've seen Instagram compilations coming up at the end of the year, but this is the first year in a really long time, if not the first year ever, where we're starting to see like individual people edits coming out of like, this is me showcasing what I did over the last year.
The reason, so when I say 100%, I mean the videos that came out this month, leading up right up to the end of the year for Store Awards. Yes, like some of the people that are putting out videos, I think it is what you're saying, but I think just the time being like, we're gonna do it, basically collect clips until right up until the point, is 100%. Yeah, I think Store Awards for especially just to get in for like video of the year or one man army or I don't know. I can't remember the categories. There's a bunch of them. I don't know if they're the same ones either.
Here's the thing though, is the video isn't like, that's only one category, or like maybe there's two categories of like YouTube edit.
There's a bunch of athlete categories.
But there's definitely a bunch of athlete categories that are like who put out content in a way that made it like, even if it was just Instagram, like and they're gonna end up winning for, Joe Scandra winning like what was it, Mad Scientist Award last year or whatever, and that's not because he put out a video. That's because he's just been consistent with content on Instagram, and I guess other places as well.
Yeah,
but,
and I guess like the feeling for me is I would have preferred it if this happened throughout the year, because we just started this thing. I said I'm overwhelmed. It's too many videos. It's too many videos for me at one time. I'm not.
We're being overwhelmed by the content gods.
Yeah.
We're no longer blessed. We're overwhelmed to the point where it's hard to keep up.
Because what's gonna happen? I'm thinking like we're still gonna see some of these because again, you like you said, you don't think it's 100% store awards, so that means we're probably gonna see some year enders and stuff from people that are a bit late, going into January. But what's in February? Like I bet you we're not going to be seeing.
Yeah, we're probably not going to see much
then.
over the course of the next few months. Maybe before January. Yeah, I'm not expecting anything really coming out of the parkour world over winter, basically. What's the list we have? So we've already talked about Hazel, we talked about Capstone, we talked about Mind the Gap, we talked about Valtteri's video.
Yeah, and I see I'm almost the ones that we've already talked about in previous podcasts. I've already forgotten about because of just
there's more. Yeah.
So we have a short list here of just things that have come out in the last week, and I think even as we're recording this today, I think there was another drop, but we have Denister put out Continuing Progress. Guy put out Mucho Relaxo. Matt McCreary put out Squiggles. Lisa Schneider did a year recap, which I think is mostly repost, but all over the place. Lisa Eckert put out Off Access. Rachel Go put out Red, and then Pariah Clan put out Flinging Muck. And is there anything, because this was like our list yesterday, but I don't know if in the last like 24 hours, if anything else has dropped.
Yeah, so probably, I don't know. But yeah, that's a lot of videos to come out basically over the course of like 1 week or so. And it is pretty overwhelming. Let's just kind of like take that list. So we had 7 videos.
Since last, this isn't a week. This is since like we last recorded a podcast.
Yeah. So, what are your standout videos?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with Matt McCreary, Squiggles, and I'm also gonna go with. I wanted to. You know what? Yeah, Lisa Eckert, I think had I don't know if I'm saying that last name right, but I just think in terms of edit and overall feel of video, I'll just mention too, like Lisa Schneider also had a great video. I just really like the edit.
The style in Lisa Eckert's video was really cool.
Yeah. It just felt I really enjoyed the watch.
With it.
I really
The term is vibe.
Yeah.
It's called vibing.
I was really vibing with Lisa Eckert's video, but Lisa Schneider's was just very impressive, and I think we were talking about yesterday, and you were saying she really established herself as a powerhouse right now.
Yeah, she's got some big jumping ability and good control. The interesting thing about Lisa Schneider's video is that it was blocked in Canada, so we couldn't watch it. We had to download a VPN to actually watch. Lisa Schneider's
can't
video.
even share a link with you.
So I guess I also wonder where else, if it's blocked here, where else is it blocked? I wonder if it was blocked in the US or.
Yeah.
It's clearly not in the UK because I used a UK VPN to watch it. But yeah, I wonder where else it's blocked.
I can't remember this ever happening.
It's unfortunate because it really like impacts her reach with her video. So it's really unfortunate because like she's not going to get many views on it especially if it's just Canada, it's not a big deal. But if it's other places, it could be huge. But yeah, going back to Matt McCreary, that's definitely my favorite out of the ones that we listed, out of the 7 we just listed. And in the running for like maybe my favorite video of the year.
Yeah, I'd like to visit that topic next week.
Yeah.
Because we got Store Awards. I don't know when they're gonna drop it, but next week is gonna be, I think, our last STS of the year.
Yeah.
And so I think next week we can visit the
okay.
because I want to give it some time to marinate.
Well, I have to rewatch some of them to like
Yeah.
see to like I mean capstone obviously like it's grown on me more and more, and that could end up being my favorite video of the year, but man, Matt's that got so much style.
Yeah,
it's
there
wild.
also might be some other solo projects that that actually came out in the calendar year that we're just not thinking of right now.
That's true.
So I do want to
5 holes.
Yeah, there's this one with this guy who's
Matt McCreary number
doing
2.
some different things. Yeah. So on the topic of Matt McCreary and Squiggles, what's this? So other than the fact that he, go ahead. All right. So yeah, tell me more.
Oh, he does really hard things, but he does them really artfully in lines. So it's like you don't even really get to understand how hard what he just did was, because he's already moving into the next move and doing it so smoothly and well. And even when he falls, it's beautiful. It's like just like kind of like not quite making the rotation or whatever, but he still makes it out. He's doing things that nobody else does, like in terms of the creativity of the movements he chooses. But not only that, he chooses to do them in really unique spots. And so he's got this whole, like, he's got the creative movement. He's got a completely different vision for how, like, movement works. He does really hard things, but he interacts with the environment, and that is what makes Squiggles such a cool video, and I loved it.
Yeah. The word that stands out in my head is rewatch.
Definitely has rewatch value.
That it well, more than anything I've seen this year. And it's because of, well, he's known as the unique creative guy, and I think sometimes with his Instagram posting, for me, sometimes it's to a fault. Sometimes I think there's stuff that he posts where I'm like, this is incredible, and other times I'm like, oh, that was just kind of silly, and I'm not really into it as much. But this video was packed with things that were clearly very difficult. They also checks off that. Checks off the difficulty, checks off the creativity, also checks off the looking cool, which is a big part of what I look for in parkour. Is I'm not a big fan, as I've coined geek parkour, right? I'm not a big fan of geek parkour where you're just doing stuff low to the ground that just kind of looks lame. I'm not as big a fan of that, but everything in this video just looked really cool, and there's just so many unique things, and that's what's going to give it, I think, so much rewatch. It actually takes me back to the pre-2010 era where someone would release a video and it was a video to be studied. They would put out a drop and you'd have to watch it a bunch of times just to see like exactly what they were doing, and that there hasn't, for me, really been a video like that in some time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect length. Like, it's not too long, and that also feeds into the whole rewatch value. It's like, oh, I can watch this again real quick because it was packed full of stuff, and there wasn't too much B-roll, and there wasn't, it felt like the lines were like, interesting to watch enough to rewind real quick and go back and rewatch that line. I actually wanted to talk about Guy's video, because I actually felt a little bit the opposite there with Matt's video, where I felt like it was a bit too long and it was kind of had a slow start, but over the course of watching it, you start to like realize this guy is going huge, and he's doing really hard stuff, and it's very stark contrast to Matt's video in that their styles are so different. You have Matt on the one hand who's doing really creative, interesting, like beautiful lines, and then you have Guy on the other hand doing really big, more traditional parkour.
Well, to be fair though, and one thing I just want to mention again for Matt McCreary's video is that there are some big sends in there.
Oh yeah,
that are not really uncharacteristic of him, but not really what he's known for, what you see on Instagram a lot, and probably because he was saving those things.
But also not a ton of traditional parkour.
Yeah, he's not doing the fat drop pre's.
Yeah.
He's doing the fat dives. He's doing the fat dive over stuff, but he's not doing, just like the take impact on your feet.
Yeah.
Sort of stuff.
And Guy had some of those in there.
Oh, yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
many of those. And there was some really like amazing sends that he had in the video. I actually just wish it was shorter and took me into the video quicker.
Yeah.
That's my one criticism of it. But I thought it was a great video other than that.
I almost put Guy's video in the same category as Denister's, where they are a bit harder. They were a bit harder for me to appreciate right away because they're following capstone. And so, you have a capstone video where it's like, okay, we're going to take some of the best in the world for taking the drops and doing the big gaps and things like that, and really pushing the boundaries. And we're going to put out this project. And then you have Guy, who's someone that could be in that, should and could be in that project, who doesn't have the same capacity for an edit or filming or anything like that. Like, there were some things about the edit where, like you said, it went a bit long. There's some replays in there where I'm like, okay, I've seen it and it's the same angle again and again. That's a little weird. But yeah, overall it was, I think I've given it 2 watches now, and he's definitely like a really special talent. It's just not like the greatest video to really even, and I think even also some of the angles and stuff there could have been better selection for that sort of thing to show it. And then you have Denister, who I think the only fault is like he just doesn't have the spots with like the crazy heights and things, like some of the bigger jumps are like a little bit close to the ground and stuff. The one thing I will say for him is the title is perfect, and it's very key to him. He's another special guy who's just been continuing to pretty much on his own push himself and progress.
So I think we can consider Denister's continuing progress to be a sequel to Creating Progress.
Was that another video title he had?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
And so they're both CP, which is his actual name. So I don't know if you caught this. So this is Denister, that's his handle on both Instagram and YouTube. But his name is CP, which is like Ko Chen Pin is his real name or something like that. But he goes by CP typically. But his handle on social media is Denister. So, but Continue Progress, Creating Progress, CP. That's I think it's a cool.
To go back and watch.
It's a cool line of like kind of following his thread in his journey through parkour. But yeah, I agree. He did some fat jumps in there. A lot of it is closer to the ground level. Doesn't make it less impressive, but it's hard to like compare it against a capstone or Guy's Mucho Relaxo video. But I loved it. I thought it was good. It still doesn't hold a candle to Matt's video, in my opinion, in terms of like, this is such a good video.
It's tricky because when they all come out at the same time too, we're like kind of forced to compare.
You're forced to compare. Exactly.
I don't like it because we're talking about 2 different styles. We're talking about
if they came out months apart, I would be like, oh, sick. This is awesome video, and I wouldn't even think to like compare it. But now it's like literally came out in the same week, so it's like okay. And I think it's intended to be like that in a way because of, I think largely because of store rewards.
The last one we got on here is Pariah Clan Flinging Muck, which it's an appropriate title. I would say that the biggest takeaway for me with Flinging Muck was just the amount of times I saw that the floor was wet. The ground was wet and it was filmed fairly recently
in wintry England.
So it's a cool, very cool concept with that. Some of the filming and editing is just hard to watch, really.
So not only was the ground wet in a lot of the clips, but a lot of it was shot in the dark.
Yeah.
And I think that's largely on purpose. Well, I don't know, like probably gets dark around 4:30 or 5 p.m. or something like that. Kind of like how it does here, and the ground never dries up. And yeah, I mean, there was a lot of use of like wide angle fisheye lens stuff, and I mean, it was a fun watch. It wasn't my favorite video by any means. I almost feel like you said, it's really hard to kind of know what's happening half the video, and it's not really my style of video. Like I've said this before, but I think like sometimes like some of the newer generations of athletes and parkour enthusiasts are really nerding out about crappy video quality. Like they think it's cool, and to me it just felt like crappy video quality for the whole video. Yeah,
I don't know. It's always, you know, artistic interpretation, because one of the I don't know their name, but one of the filmmakers here is also doing Gaps magazine, and and I don't know if they're doing all the photography and artwork for that, but there's some I have no idea what Gaps mag is about or anything. I think it's a cool name, and I think the content that I've seen come out in terms of like photos and illustrations and stuff is very cool.
Looks high quality. It looks good.
I like that they're not trying to be journalists. I like that they're not trying to tell weird stories or stuff like that. I like that it's just some cool features of events and photos and athletes.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by Gas Mag. I think that could be a really cool outlet, another cool medium for parkour to be seen.
I think they sold out of like their first issue.
Did they?
As well, okay. I don't know, or like it came up, but yeah, I was interested in, and I don't know. Someone get at us if you know where I can get a copy, because I'm interested in
on the
seeing
secondhand
it.
market. Yeah. So just quickly going back to Flinging Muck, but I think we're like, I mean, the title, like you said, is appropriate. There was a lot of substandard landings, we'll say. But
well, it's a send, like it's like capstone.
Video. Yeah, I know, and I wonder if we're entering into a different era in parkour.
Oh, we totally are.
Where like standards for like what counts is lower. That's like Dom's stay instead of stick.
Is that a thing?
Well, like when he was here, he was like landing on a wall, not sticking it, but staying on the wall, and he's like, "Yeah, stay," you know. And I think it's like, yeah, what happened to our high standard, you know? And I think that's still present very like largely throughout the community. But this is clearly a video where they've dropped that standard and are just like happy with grungy,
let me put
gritty movement.
Let me put it this way and tell you how you feel about it. I was teaching some beginner kids yesterday.
Yeah.
And we're doing running prees. And running prees can get really boring.
Yeah.
They can get super boring. The thing is, like, I got multiple challenges set up for them to try, and you know, we go over, they don't have a lot of patience for technique, obviously, but after they try a couple times, then I present them, I say, you have two choices. You can try to do a harder challenge, but if you can't make it, what can we do with the challenge we got? And I said, we can make it neater. And then, you know, we go into the technique and, you know, precision landing and, you know, what it's all about. But it is kind of one of those things where if you're too focused on being neater, you don't open up your ability to progress as much. And I think that's like the capstone argument, and the argument for just being more about send is that, but we also had this concept in parkour before where it was like once is never, you know?
Yeah.
But that is kind of the difference, is like if you're too focused on making things neater, you're limiting the energy you can expend on trying to progress and push further, which also is just like an entirely different set of skills and character traits too.
This is a beautiful discussion here, because it's the yin and yang, right? It's like, you have you have the send and you have the control. And too much control means you don't do anything hard or risky. And too much send and you don't have any control. And
or you can be a Daryl Stingley, and too much control means your things don't look as impressive because it looks too easy. You made it look too easy all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
But also, I will say, like, and it's a thing with him too. Whereas because they're also focused on that, I think he doesn't go into where he could potentially be pushing himself more. He's 100% disagree if he's watching this or listening. But it's kind of like two problems. Is one, if you're too focused on being the neatest, being the cleanest, your stuff's probably not going to look as impressive because it doesn't sell as, even to the trained eye, it doesn't sell as looking as hard.
That's true, yeah.
And then also you may be limiting yourself from actually pushing yourself further because you're too hyper focused on just making it like the cleanest you can.
Yeah. But it's like you have to find the balance, right?
And so with Pariah Clan, we clearly
I think we're going too far send and not enough like development and control. And maybe they do have a lot of control, and part of this is that they're doing it in suboptimal conditions. It's dark and wet outside. So, but I sent it. But like in the perfect conditions scenario, maybe they would focus on getting the clean stick and control it better. We don't know, but based on this video, it looks like it's way more on the yang side. I don't know which one is the chaos and which one's the order. I don't know, but yeah, it's like it's a beautiful discussion here because it's so true with parkour is you need that balance of control and send. And you know, if you never send, you never do anything meaningful. But if you don't have the control, then you risk flying too close to the sun.
Do you know what's funny too with this video coming out of the UK is that Americans were always criticized as having the shit tech, and now we have, you know, a UK brand or UK team coming out with, we'll say, questionable technique and kind of being all about the send. And that was a theme in parkour for the longest time, is like, it is all about the technique. And you can't come out and make videos like this. And you can't be like this.
Power is nothing without control.
Yeah. And so I do think we are entering into, or already have entered into, a new era where the old heads, because you got, you know, the guys like Storer who are very much of that camp, of the power is nothing without control camp, who are applauding and a part of Capstone.
Yeah.
And a part of this movement of that it's okay to be, as long as you can make the argument that there was, you know, 10 years of training and some control and some thought involved, it's totally defensible to land like shit.
Yeah, wow.
To fling some muck.
Wow. That was beautiful. This is a really interesting conversation. I think it's actually like been very enlightening to me just thinking about it in this way. Like, I'm really glad we talked about this Pariah Clan video because it is eye-opening, and it's like at first, like watching it, I'm just kind of like, it's just kind of sloppy, you know. But now it's like maybe I can appreciate it from a different perspective, and maybe still not be into it, but respect it in its own way.
Yeah, I think I will say that one of the differences that I would imagine someone who back in the day was hating on Americans for having the bad tech, which has been debunked several times, but someone back in the day who was making that argument, I think what it comes down to is whether or not someone looks trained. And so all the stuff you see in the Pariah Clan video, and I forgot to mention the athletes. I don't remember them all that are in there.
I think Joel and Yannick. I don't remember their last names though.
And then what's homie, who's Jay Batrick's in there also too. So he's definitely trained, and he actually looks pretty clean throughout the project too when he's in there. And the other two, I'm sure, are also definitely trained, and they look trained. It's just that some of the things they're pushing for, they're bailing. They're eating it, probably because they're trying to push their boundaries quite a bit. And so maybe the difference is that it's defensible as long as you look trained, and that that it can be defended. Because that's the whole like Justin Louis argument, if you want to get into there again, where it's like, he's being talked about as someone who has a decade plus worth of experience, and he can do all these cool things and stomp things all the time, no problem. It's just that he's really trying to push outside of his comfort zone for this, and that's why he's landing like trash.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want more discussions like this, please let us know in the comments what you want to hear us talk about. And I think with that, we'll end this STS episode.
That was a good one.
I liked it a lot.
All right. See you next week.